Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the holographic star map floating above his desk. 3 cups of cold coffee sat forgotten beside his workstation as he zoomed in on another sector of the galaxy. The Galactic Mapping Consortium kept him busy updating trade routes and marking new colonies, but something had been bothering him for weeks. Every map showed the same strange pattern. Thousands of alien territories were marked in bright colors: the blue zones of the Velthari Empire, the green sectors controlled by the Zephyrian Republic, the red military zones of the Krathan Federation. Each area was filled with detailed information about trade stations, mining operations, and diplomatic outposts. But there was one region that looked different. A roughly circular area of space showed only a simple gray boundary with words that made Jake frown. Human territory. Access restricted. No details, no trade routes, no resource markers. Just empty gray space with warning symbols around the edges. Jake had been working at the consortium for 3 years, but he had never really paid attention to this blank spot before. Now that he looked closer, it seemed wrong. The human region was huge, much larger than most alien empires, but the map showed it as completely empty. He pulled up older charts from the archive. 50 years ago, the human zone had been smaller. 100 years ago, it was even smaller. The boundary kept growing, but the maps never showed what was inside. Strange, Jake muttered to himself. He had grown up on Earth and knew that humans had hundreds of colonies spread across dozens of star systems. So why did every official galactic map show human space as empty? Working late again, human Jake. The clicking voice behind him belonged to Zeftal Crix, his supervisor. The tall insect-like alien approached on 4 spindly legs, his compound eyes reflecting the light from the star maps. Jake turned around. "Hey, Zeftal, I have a question about these charts." The Velthari alien tilted his triangular head. "What troubles you?" "Look at this." Jake pointed to the gray zone. "Every other species has detailed maps of their territory. We can see their cities, their trade routes, everything, but human space is just blank. Why is that?" Zeftal's mandibles began clicking rapidly, a sign Jake had learned meant the alien was nervous. "Some boundaries exist for good reasons." Human Jake. "Your people chose isolation many cycles ago. We respect this choice." "But that doesn't make sense," Jake said. "I grew up on Earth. We have trade with other species. We're not isolated." The clicking grew louder. "Perhaps you should focus on updating the Andromedian sector maps instead. The mining guilds are requesting new route calculations." Jake frowned. In 3 years of working together, Zeftal had never avoided answering a question before. The alien loved to share information about everything from stellar mechanics to ancient history. This reaction was completely out of character. "Zeftal, what aren't you telling me?" But his supervisor had already scuttled away, muttering something in his native language that Jake couldn't understand. That evening, Jake sat in his small apartment and opened his personal communication array. He scrolled through his contacts until he found Lisa Park, a friend from college who now worked as a communications officer on a frontier station near the edge of human space. Her face appeared on the screen a few minutes later. Lisa looked tired with dark circles under her brown eyes. "Jake, good to see you. How's life at the mapping center?" "Could be better," Jake said. "Lisa, I need to ask you something strange. Have you noticed anything weird about how alien ships behave near your station?" Lisa's expression became serious. "Actually, yes. Why do you ask?" "I've been looking at galactic maps and something doesn't add up. Tell me what you've seen." Lisa glanced around her small office, then leaned closer to the camera. "Over the past few months, we've had several alien vessels approach our sector, but they all do the same thing. As soon as they detect our boundary markers, they change course immediately, not gradually, like they're following normal navigation protocols. They turn around fast, like they're running from something." "Running? From what?" "That's the weird part. There's nothing dangerous here, no hostile species, no stellar anomalies, no radiation fields, just normal space. But the aliens act like crossing into human territory would be the worst mistake they could make." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "Have you reported this to command?" "I tried. My commanding officer told me to mind my own business and focus on my assigned duties. When I pressed the issue, he said that border protocols with alien species were classified above my security level. Lisa, I think something big is being hidden from us." His friend nodded slowly. "I've been thinking the same thing. Last week, I tried to access historical records about first contact with other species. Most of the files are restricted or have been redacted so heavily that they're useless." Jake told her about his conversation with Zeftal and the strange blank zones on the galactic maps. As he spoke, Lisa's face grew pale. "Jake, there's something else. Something I probably shouldn't tell you over an open channel." "What is it?" Lisa looked around again, then whispered, "2 days ago, a Zephyrian scout ship sent us a distress signal. They said they had accidentally crossed into human space and were requesting immediate assistance to leave. But here's the thing. They were still 3 light years outside our official border when they sent that message." 3 light years? That's nowhere near human territory. Exactly. Whatever they're afraid of, it's not just our official boundaries. It's like there's some invisible barrier that's much larger than what appears on any map. Jake stared at the screen, his mind racing. "Lisa, I think I need to do some digging. Unofficial digging." "Be careful," she warned. "I have a feeling that if someone is keeping secrets this big, they won't be happy about people asking questions." After ending the call, Jake sat in the darkness of his apartment, staring out at the stars visible through his window. Somewhere, out there was a mystery that involved his entire species, and apparently, everyone in the galaxy knew about it except for regular humans like himself. He made a decision. Tomorrow, he would start investigating on his own. He would find out why the galactic map stopped at human space and why no one dared to ask why. But as Jake prepared for bed, he received an encrypted message on his personal device. The sender was listed as unknown, but when he opened it, he recognized Lisa's communication code. The message was short but disturbing. "They're not keeping us in, Jake. They're keeping something else out." Jake stared at the words until they burned into his memory. Whatever secrets surrounded human space, it was bigger and more dangerous than he had imagined, and now he was determined to uncover the truth no matter what the cost. Jake couldn't concentrate on his work the next morning. Lisa's message kept repeating in his mind. He made mistakes on simple calculations and found himself staring at the blank human zone on his maps instead of updating the trade routes he was supposed to be working on. During his lunch break, he used the consortium's research database to search for information about human expansion into space. Most of the results were basic historical summaries that he already knew from school. Humans had developed faster than light travel, made contact with alien species, and established colonies across multiple star systems. Nothing unusual there. But when he tried to access more detailed records about the early years of human space exploration, he hit walls everywhere. Files were classified, redacted, or simply missing. Even basic information about first contact, protocols, and early diplomatic meetings had been restricted. Jake was about to give up when he remembered something. Dr. Amanda Knox worked in the consortium's xenoarchaeology department. She studied ancient alien civilizations and might have access to different databases. More importantly, she was human and might be willing to help. He found Dr. Knox in her lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing ruins from a dozen different worlds. She was a middle-aged woman with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her workspace was cluttered with artifacts and research notes. "Dr. Knox, I'm Jake Morrison from the mapping department. I was wondering if I could ask you some questions about historical records." She looked up from her work and smiled. "Call me Amanda. What kind of records are you looking for?" Jake hesitated, then decided to be direct. "I'm trying to find information about early human contact with other species, but most of the files seem to be classified. I thought you might have access to different archives." Amanda's smile faded. "That's an interesting question. Why the sudden interest in ancient history?" Jake explained what he had discovered about the blank zones on galactic maps and his conversation with Zeftal. As he spoke, Amanda's expression grew more serious. You know, she said slowly, I've noticed some strange patterns in my own research, patterns that I've been afraid to talk about. What kind of patterns? Amanda pulled up a new display showing a timeline of alien civilizations. In the past 300 years, 17 spacefaring species have simply vanished from galactic records. The official explanations vary: civil wars, natural disasters, economic collapse. But when I dig deeper, the evidence doesn't support those explanations. She pointed to different entries on the timeline. The Velkari Empire, supposedly destroyed by a plague, but their medical technology was advanced enough to handle any known disease. The Thraxian Federation officially collapsed due to resource depletion, but their territory contained some of the richest mineral deposits in the galaxy. Jake studied the timeline. What happened to them really? I don't know. But here's what's interesting. In every case, these civilizations had recently initiated contact or trade negotiations with humanity just before they disappeared. A cold feeling settled in Jake's stomach. All of them? Every single one. The timeline is consistent. First contact with humans, followed by a period of increasing interaction, then sudden silence. Their territories get marked as hazardous zones or stellar anomalies, and the galactic community just moves on. Before Jake could respond, they heard heavy footsteps in the corridor outside. The lab door opened, and a large, weathered man in a military-style jacket entered. He had the bearing of a soldier and scars on his hands that spoke of hard experience. "Dr. Knox," the man said in a gravelly voice. "We need to talk." Amanda stood up quickly. "Captain Blake? What are you doing? Here?" "I heard through certain channels that someone was asking questions about human expansion history, questions that might get people into trouble." The man turned to Jake. "You must be Morrison. I'm Roy Blake, formerly of the Earth Coalition Deep Space Fleet, now supposedly retired." Jake shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip. "Captain Blake, what do you know about what we've been discussing?" Roy looked around the lab, then moved to close the door. "More than I wish I did." "Amanda, show him the Kepler station records." Amanda's face went pale. "Roy, those files are beyond classified. If anyone finds out we have them, if anyone finds out what's really happening, we'll all have bigger problems than security violations." Amanda reluctantly pulled up a new set of files. The holographic display showed communication logs from a deep space station that Jake had never heard of. Kepler Station was humanity's first long-range exploration base, Roy explained, built about 200 years ago to establish contact with distant alien civilizations. The official records say it was decommissioned due to budget cuts. "But that's not what really happened," Amanda added quietly. Roy's expression grew grim. Kepler Station was evacuated in a single day. Every person on board was brought back to Earth and immediately placed under the highest level of security restrictions. The station itself was destroyed by our own military. "Why?" Jake asked. "Because of what they found out there. What they brought back with them." The lab door opened again, and a well-dressed man in an expensive suit entered. He had the confident bearing of a politician and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Captain Blake, Dr. Knox," the man said calmly. "And you must be Mr. Morrison. I'm Senator Paul Hayes from the Earth Coalition Council." Jake felt his heart start racing. Politicians didn't just show up in research labs by coincidence. "Senator," Roy said coldly, "how did you know we were here?" "The consortium security systems are more thorough than you might think. When certain restricted files are accessed, people in my position get notified immediately." Senator Hayes looked at each of them in turn. "I'm here to warn you that your investigation has attracted attention from the highest levels of government. Attention that could be very dangerous for all of you." "Are you threatening us?" Amanda asked. "On the contrary, I'm trying to help you. What you're investigating involves classified information that could affect the security of every human being in the galaxy. There are things about our expansion into space that most people are better off not knowing." Jake found his voice. "What kind of things?" The senator was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Morrison, what do you think would happen if the galactic community discovered that humanity posed a threat to every other species in the galaxy? What do you think they would do to protect themselves? That's ridiculous, Jake said. Humans aren't a threat to anyone. Senator Hayes smiled sadly. That's what we've let most people believe. But the truth is much more complicated. The isolation protocol around human space wasn't our choice, Mr. Morrison. It was a quarantine, imposed to protect the rest of the galaxy from something far more dangerous than any alien invasion. Roy stepped forward. Paul, don't do this. He's not ready for the truth. None of us were ready, the senator replied. But the truth has a way of coming out eventually, and I'd rather he heard it from us than discovered it on his own. Amanda sank into her chair. Jake, what we're about to tell you will change everything you thought you knew about humanity's place in the universe. Senator Hayes activated a security field around the lab, ensuring their conversation couldn't be monitored. The 17 civilizations that Dr. Knox mentioned weren't destroyed by wars or disasters. They were consumed by something that followed, humanity out of the deep space regions we explored 2 centuries ago. Human space isn't expanding because we're colonizing new worlds, Roy added grimly. It's expanding because whatever we brought back is still spreading outward, and the galactic community has learned to stay away from anything we've touched. Jake looked at each of them, seeing the fear and guilt in their eyes. What did we bring back? Senator Hayes met his gaze. Something that changes everything it encounters. Something that turns entire civilizations into extensions of itself. And the worst part is, most humans don't even know it's happening to them. Commander Alex Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Nightfall, staring at the distress signal data scrolling across his screen. In 20 years of deep space service, he had never seen anything like it. The signal was coming from inside the quarantine zone, the first time in decades that anything had attempted to enter human space from the outside. Commander, called out Lieutenant Sarah Bell from the communications station. The signal is definitely Zephyrian in origin. Military codes indicate it's from their exploration vessel Starwind. Alex frowned. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy for their careful, methodical approach to space exploration. They wouldn't enter restricted territory by accident. Set course for the signal source, he ordered. But maintain yellow alert. Something doesn't feel right about this. Dr. Maya Johnson, the ship's xenobiologist, looked up from her scanner readings. Commander, I'm detecting the ship about 6 hours away at maximum speed. But there's something strange about the energy signatures. Strange how? The ship appears to be intact, but I'm not reading any life signs. Also, the temporal readings are inconsistent. Alex had worked with Maya for 3 years and trusted her expertise. If she said something was inconsistent, it usually meant trouble. The journey to the Zephyrian ship felt longer than usual. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were heading into something dangerous. The quarantine zone had been established for good reasons, even if most people didn't know what those reasons were. When they finally reached the Starwind, Alex understood why Maya had been concerned. The ship hung motionless in space, its hull intact but its lights dark. There was no response to their communication attempts. Take us in closer, Alex ordered. Prepare a boarding party. Commander, Maya said quietly. You should see this. According to our scanners, that ship has been drifting here for 3 months. But galactic tracking records show the Starwind only went missing 6 hours ago. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. That's impossible. I've run the scans 3 times. The readings are consistent. The boarding party consisted of Alex, Maya, and 4 security officers. They used environmental suits and took every precaution as they entered the Zephyrian ship through its main airlock. The interior was pristine. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the corridors, but there was no sign of damage or struggle. The ship's systems were functioning normally, but the crew quarters were empty. Where is everyone? Asked Sergeant Tony Martinez, one of the security officers. Maya was examining her scanner readings. I'm detecting trace biological material, but no actual bodies. It's like the crew just vanished. They made their way to the bridge, where they found the ship's computer core still active. Alex accessed the captain's logs while Maya examined the science station data. Commander, Maya called out, her voice tense. You need to see this. The final science logs made no sense. They described encounters with impossible geometries and shadows that move between stars. The Zephyrian scientists had recorded measurements that violated known laws of physics. But it was the captain's final log entry that made Alex's blood run cold. Day 73 of our exploration mission. We have encountered something beyond our understanding. The humans, they weren't fleeing from an enemy when they established their isolation protocols. They were running from something they had become. The shadows aren't separate entities, they're part of them now. We tried to maintain distance, but it's too late. I can feel it changing us already. To anyone who finds this record, they're not gone. The humans didn't defeat them, they became them. The log ended abruptly. Maya, Alex said quietly, what do you make of this? Before she could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the nightfall. Alex's communication device crackled to life. Commander Chen, this is Admiral Kate Sullivan. You are ordered to evacuate that vessel immediately and return to your ship. Alex looked around in confusion. Admiral? How did you know we were here? Commander, you have 30 seconds to evacuate before we destroy that ship. Admiral, we're still gathering evidence. This could be important. 20 seconds, Commander. Move now. Alex grabbed Maya's arm. We're leaving. Everyone out now. They barely made it back to the nightfall before Alex watched in shock as 3 Earth Coalition warships appeared and opened fire on the Zephyrian vessel. The Starwind was vaporized in seconds. Admiral Sullivan's ship docked with the Nightfall an hour later. She was a stern woman with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to making difficult decisions. Commander Chen, Dr. Johnson, you are both now bound by the highest levels of military classification, she announced as soon as she stepped aboard. Everything you saw on that ship is classified beyond top secret. Admiral, Alex said. What's going on? That ship's crew had discovered something important. Yes, they had. Something that could have endangered every human being in the galaxy if it had been allowed to spread. Maya stepped forward. Admiral, the temporal readings from that ship were impossible. It had been in space for months, but it only went missing hours ago. How do you explain that? Admiral Sullivan was quiet for a long moment. Dr. Johnson, have you detected similar temporal anomalies anywhere else? Maya hesitated, then nodded. Actually, yes. I've been tracking unusual readings throughout human space for the past year. Energy signatures that don't match any known technology. Those readings aren't from our technology, the Admiral said grimly. They're from something else. Something that exists partially outside normal space-time. Alex felt pieces of a horrible puzzle beginning to come together. Admiral, what happened to humanity during our early expansion? We encountered something in the void between galaxies, Commander. Something that doesn't destroy civilizations so much as absorb them. The 17 species that have vanished over the past few centuries weren't destroyed. They were converted. Converted into what? Extensions of the void entities. Scouts and guardians that patrol the edges of infected space, ensuring that the contamination doesn't spread too quickly. Maya's scanner beeped. She looked down at it, then up at the Admiral with growing horror. Admiral, I'm detecting those same anomalous energy signatures on this ship. They started appearing as soon as we boarded the Zephyrian vessel. Admiral Sullivan nodded sadly. The contamination is subtle but persistent. Every human ship that ventures too far into deep space doesn't just disappear. It returns changed, bringing more of the void influence back with it. Alex stared at her. Are you saying that we're infected? Commander, humanity as we knew it began changing 2 centuries ago. The isolation protocols weren't just to protect other species from us. They were to slow down our transformation into something else. But we're still human, Maya protested. Are we? The Admiral asked quietly. Dr. Johnson, when was the last time you questioned orders from Earth Command? When was the last time any of us felt the urge to explore beyond our established boundaries? Alex thought about it and realized with growing unease that he couldn't remember ever wanting to leave human space. The idea of exploring alien territories felt wrong, almost frightening. The void entities aren't evil, Admiral Sullivan continued. They're refugees from a dying universe, seeking to preserve consciousness in any form possible. But their method of preservation changes everything they touch. So what are we now? Alex asked. We're becoming something new, a hybrid between human consciousness and void influence. The question is whether we can maintain our essential humanity while serving as guardians for the rest of the galaxy. Maya looked at her scanner again. Admiral, the energy readings are getting stronger. Whatever's happening to us, it's accelerating. Then we need to get back to base immediately, Admiral Sullivan said. There are protocols in place for this situation, but they're not pleasant. As the nightfall began its journey back to human space, Alex stared out at the stars and wondered how many of them had been dimmed by civilizations that had faced the same choice his species now confronted. The void was patient, but it was also inevitable. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, 17 converted species maintained their silent watch, ensuring that the galaxy remained unaware of the price of survival. Dr. Ben Carter had been studying the quantum signatures for 6 months before he understood what they meant. The physicist sat in his laboratory on Luna Station, staring at data that should have been impossible. Every scan of human settlements showed the same disturbing pattern, energy readings that suggested reality itself was being slowly altered. His hands shook as he compiled his final report. The truth was worse than he had feared. According to his calculations, humans who registered as pure, showing no signs of void influence, now made up less than 30% of the population in human space. The rest had been changed in ways so subtle that they didn't even realize what had happened to them. A soft knock on his lab door interrupted his work. Dr. Carter, this is Rachel Stone. I believe you've been expecting me. Ben looked up to see a woman in her 40s with determined eyes and the bearing of someone used to taking charge. He had heard whispers about Rachel Stone and her growing resistance movement, but he had never expected her to contact him directly. Ms. Stone. Yes, I've been hoping someone like you would find me. Rachel entered the lab and activated a small device that created a privacy field around them. Dr. Carter, we know about your research into the quantum signatures. We also know that your findings confirm what we've suspected for months. And what's that? That most of humanity has been systematically altered without their knowledge or consent. That our government has been deliberately exposing certain populations to controlled doses of void influence. Ben nodded grimly. The patterns are undeniable. Rural colonies show higher conversion rates than urban centers. Military personnel stationed on frontier outposts show almost complete transformation. It's not random, it's planned. Rachel pulled up a holographic display showing population data across human space. We've been tracking the same patterns. The government is creating a buffer population. Humans who are changed enough to resist. Full void transformation, but still altered enough to serve as early warning systems. How many people know about this? More than the government realizes, but fewer than we need. Most people can't see the changes in themselves or their loved ones. The void influence is designed to feel natural, even beneficial. Ben showed her his latest scans. According to these readings, the affected humans actually have enhanced cognitive abilities in certain areas. Better pattern recognition, improved intuition, increased resistance to psychological stress. From their perspective, they're becoming better versions of themselves. But they're also becoming less human, Rachel said quietly. The question is whether that's necessarily a bad thing. Rachel stared at him. Dr. Carter, please tell me you're not suggesting that this transformation is acceptable. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just trying to understand the science. The void entities aren't randomly destroying consciousness. They're preserving it in a modified form. From a purely objective standpoint, the changed humans might be better adapted for survival in deep space, at the cost of their free will. Before Ben could respond, his laboratory's security system activated. The doors sealed, and a holographic display appeared, showing the face of General Frank Davis, one of the highest-ranking officers in Earth Coalition Command. Dr. Carter, Ms. Stone, you are both in violation of multiple security protocols. However, under the current circumstances, I'm prepared to offer you a choice. Rachel stepped forward. General Davis, we know about the containment facilities beyond Pluto. We know about the deliberate exposure programs. The general's expression didn't change. Then you know that we're fighting a war for the survival of human consciousness itself. Every decision we've made has been calculated to preserve as much of our species as possible. By turning us into something else, Ben said, by accepting the inevitable and trying to control the process. Dr. Carter, your research confirms what we've known for decades. The void influence cannot be stopped or reversed. Our only choice is to manage the transformation in a way that preserves the essential elements of human identity. A new voice joined the conversation as another figure appeared on the display. It was Commander Alex Chen, but something about him seemed different. His eyes held a depth that hadn't been there before, and when he spoke, his voice carried an odd resonance. Dr. Carter, Ms. Stone, I understand your concerns. 6 months ago, I would have shared them. But I've experienced the change firsthand, and I can tell you that what we become isn't a loss, it's an evolution. Rachel backed away from the display. Commander Chen, what have they done to you? They've given me the ability to understand things I never could before. I can sense the void entities directly now. I can communicate with them, negotiate with them. The 17 species that were absorbed weren't destroyed. They were preserved in a new form. General Davis nodded. Commander Chen represents our best hope for a controlled transition. He and others like him serve as bridges between pure humanity and the void entities. Ben studied the readings from Chen's image. The quantum signatures were unlike anything he had seen before. A perfect blend of human consciousness and void. Influence, Commander, Ben said carefully. Do you still feel human? Chen smiled, and for a moment he looked exactly like his old self. I feel more human than I ever did before. I understand our place in the universe now. The void entities aren't invaders. They're refugees. Their home universe died billions of years ago, and they've been searching for a way to preserve consciousness ever since. But they change everything they touch, Rachel protested. They adapt it for survival. Every species they've encountered was facing extinction in one form or another. The Velkari were dying from a genetic plague. The Thraxians were destroying their own worlds through resource depletion. The void entities offered them a chance to continue existing. General Davis pulled up new data showing the expansion of human space over the past century. The boundary keeps growing because we're not colonizing new worlds. We're establishing safe zones where the transformation can occur gradually. The 17 absorbed species now patrol the edges of these zones, ensuring that unaltered alien civilizations don't accidentally trigger a rapid expansion. You're talking about the end of human free will, Rachel said. I'm talking about the continuation of human consciousness, the general replied. The alternative is complete extinction when the void entities run out of patience. Ben looked at the data again, trying to process the implications. General, what happens to those of us who refuse the transformation? You'll be relocated to preserve zones within human space, safe areas where pure humans can continue to exist and maintain our original culture. Think of it as a living museum of what we used to be. Commander Chen leaned forward. Dr. Carter, I know this is difficult to accept, but I've seen what waits for us in the void between galaxies. The universe is vast and cold and mostly empty. The void entities are offering us a chance to survive the heat death of everything. To preserve not just our consciousness, but the consciousness of every species we encounter. Rachel activated her own communication device. This conversation is being broadcast to resistance cells throughout human space. People deserve to know what choice they're being forced to make. Then they'll also hear this, General Davis said. The galactic community has been monitoring our transformation for 2 centuries. They know what we're becoming, and they're preparing for the day when we complete the transition. If we resist or try to reverse the process, they will unite to destroy us before we can spread the influence further. So our choice is between transformation and genocide, Ben said. Our choice is between evolution and extinction, Commander Chen corrected. I've been to the edges of human space. I've seen the fleets of alien warships waiting beyond our borders. They're not there to trade or explore. They're there to contain us and, if necessary, to eliminate us. The privacy field around Ben's laboratory flickered and died. Through the windows, he could see security forces surrounding the station. Dr. Carter, Ms. Stone, General Davis said, you have 1 hour to decide, join the controlled transition program, or be relocated to the preserve zones. But understand that this decision affects not just you, but the survival of our entire species. As the communication ended, Ben and Rachel looked at each other, both understanding that they had run out of time and options. Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that one small species was about to make a choice that would affect the destiny of the entire galaxy. The transformation was no longer a possibility. It was happening whether they accepted it or not. The only question was whether humanity would guide its own evolution or be swept along by forces beyond its control. President Helen Brooks stood before the emergency assembly of the Earth Coalition Council, knowing that the words she was about to speak would change the course of human history forever. The revelation about the void entities and humanity's gradual transformation had forced a crisis that could no longer be hidden or managed in secret. Members of the council, she began, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. We face a choice that no species in galactic history has ever confronted. We can resist the transformation and face certain destruction, or we can embrace it and become something new. The council chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from every human colony and settlement had gathered for this unprecedented session. Some looked frightened, others angry, but all understood that their decision would affect not just humanity, but potentially every intelligent species in the galaxy. Commander Sam Price entered the chamber, and Helen saw several council members step back instinctively. Sam had volunteered for the Advanced Transformation Program 6 months ago, and the changes were visible. Their eyes held depths that seemed to reflect the vastness of space itself, and when they moved, it was with a fluid grace that no unaltered human possessed. President Brooks, Sam said, their voice carrying harmonics that resonated in dimensions beyond normal hearing. I bring a message from the void entities. They are willing to negotiate. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. In 2 centuries of contact, the void entities had never shown interest in communication, only absorption. What do they want? Asked Councilman Peter Ward from the Mars colonies. Sam smiled, and for a moment, they looked entirely human. They want to go home, but their home universe no longer exists, so they're trying to create a new one where consciousness can survive the death of everything. By turning us into them, said Councilwoman Linda Ross from the Outer Territories. By preserving us in a form that can exist between realities, Sam corrected. The void entities aren't destroyers, they're gardeners. They're trying to save as much consciousness as possible before this universe grows cold and empty. The chamber doors opened and an elderly figure entered. Helen recognized Elder Zixathara, one of the oldest living beings in the galaxy. The ancient alien moved slowly on multiple legs, its crystalline carapace reflecting the chamber's lights in patterns that spoke of immense age and wisdom. Honored Elder, Helen said, rising from her seat. We weren't expecting you. These events affect more than just humanity, President Brooks. I come to share knowledge that my species has kept hidden for 3 million years. The elder moved to the center of the chamber, and when it spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons. This is not the first time the void entities have appeared in our galaxy. They emerge every few million years seeking new forms of consciousness to preserve. My ancestors encountered them when your species was still learning to use fire. What happened? Helen asked. My people chose to become guardians rather than prey. We managed the entity's expansion for nearly 1 million years, guiding them to dying species and helping them preserve consciousness in ways that maintained essential identity. Commander Sam stepped forward. What ended your guardianship? We grew old and tired. The responsibility was too great, the choices too difficult. Eventually, we withdrew to the galactic rim and let the entities find new guardians among younger species. The elder's multifaceted eyes focused on Sam. But you offer something we never could. Your species has the capacity to bridge the gap between unaltered consciousness and void influence. You can serve as translators between realities. At what cost? Councilman Ward demanded. At the cost of remaining exactly as you are, the elder replied. But evolution has always required sacrifice. The question is whether you will guide your own transformation or resist it until you are swept away. President Brooks looked around the chamber, seeing fear and uncertainty on every face. Elder Zixthara, what happens if we accept this role? Human space stops expanding uncontrollably. The void entities learn to work with existing galactic civilization rather than absorbing it. Your species becomes a bridge between dimensions, helping to negotiate the preservation of consciousness on a galactic scale. Sam nodded. I've seen what that future looks like. We don't lose our humanity. We expand it. We become capable of understanding and protecting forms of consciousness that we can't even imagine right now. And if we refuse? Asked Councilwoman Ross. The elder's crystalline form dimmed. Then the entities will eventually absorb you completely, as they did the 17 species before you. And when they finish with humanity, they will continue expanding, until they have consumed every intelligent species in the galaxy. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Helen realized that they weren't just choosing the fate of humanity. They were choosing the fate of countless alien civilizations that looked to them for protection. I need to know something, Helen said to Sam. Do you still feel like yourself? Sam considered the question carefully. I feel like a better version of myself. I can perceive things I never could before, understand concepts that were beyond my original comprehension. But my core identity, my memories, my essential personality, they're all still here, just enhanced. Enhanced how? I can communicate directly with the void entities. I can sense their thoughts and intentions, and I can help them understand that preservation of consciousness doesn't require the destruction of individuality. Elder Zixthara moved closer to the assembly. President Brooks, your species has already begun the transformation whether you accept it or not. The choice is not whether to change, but how to direct that change. Helen looked around the chamber, one more time, then made her decision. I call for a vote. All in favor of accepting the role of galactic guardians and embracing controlled transformation? The vote was closer than she had expected, but the majority chose evolution over extinction. As the results were announced, Sam smiled with genuine relief. The void entities are pleased, they said. They will begin teaching us how to preserve consciousness without destroying identity. In time, we'll be able to help other species make the same choice we've made. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood in his new office aboard the diplomatic station at the edge of human space. He had volunteered for partial transformation and now served as a cultural liaison between pure humans and their enhanced cousins. The changes he had undergone were subtle but profound. He could perceive dimensional layers that had been invisible before, and his understanding of galactic politics had expanded dramatically. Through his office windows, he could see the first alien ships in 2 centuries approaching human space, not as invaders or refugees, but as diplomatic partners seeking to establish formal relations with the galaxy's new guardians. The galactic maps no longer showed human space as empty territory. Instead, it was marked as the dimensional interface zone, a buffer region where consciousness could be preserved and protected from the entropy that would eventually claim the universe. Jake updated his star charts, adding new trade routes and diplomatic stations. For the first time in centuries, human space was connected to the rest of the galaxy not as a quarantine zone, but as a bridge to survival. The void entities had found their new guardians, and humanity had found its purpose among the stars. The price had been transformation, but the reward was the preservation of consciousness itself across the vast cosmos. As Jake worked, he felt a presence in his mind, not invasive, but comforting. It was the collective consciousness of the void entities, sharing their ancient knowledge and their hope for the future. They had been alone for so long, carrying the memories of countless dead civilizations. Now they had partners in their cosmic mission. The galactic map no longer stopped at human space. Instead, it showed a new kind of territory, one that existed partially in this reality and partially in dimensions beyond normal perception. A place where consciousness could survive the heat death of the universe, and continue to grow and evolve across infinite possibilities. Humanity had become something new, but in doing so, they had preserved something eternal. The guardians of the galaxy had found their purpose, and the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter in response.